Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, first of all, we hope that you and your families are keeping well during these difficult times. My name is Lina Hansen from the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation, and I'm here with my colleague, Pierre Gilles, from the Oceanographic Institute. We are part of the Secretariat of the Monaco Blue Initiative, and we will have the pleasure of facilitating our workshop today. We have the great honor and privilege to have His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco present today. Thank you so much, Monseigneur. By his side are His Excellency, Mr. Bernard Fautrier, Minister Plenipotentiary and Special Advisor of His Serene Highness for Environment, Mr. Robert Calcagno, CEO of the Oceanographic Institute, and Mr. Olivier Wenden, Vice President of the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. On behalf of all of us here today, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this first ever digital edition of the Monaco Blue Initiative. As you know, the 11th edition of the MBI could unfortunately not take place as planned in Monaco due to the COVID-19 outbreak. But in a spirit of resilience and mobilization, His Serene Highness and the steering committee of the Monaco Blue Initiative wish to sustain the strong linkages that unite the members of the MBI community and offer a space for debating and making progress on the themes of the 11th MBI. As underscored by many of you, keeping the momentum on these critical issues is more important than ever. We would like to warmly thank each of you for adapting to this new format and for being here with us today. A very special thanks to our distinguished speakers, moderator, and panelists who helped shape this event. We would also like to thank Rolex, our longtime partner for the MBI, for providing financial support to make this first digital MBI possible. This digital edition will take place through 3 online workshops. The opening workshop today, followed by 2 other sessions on 9th of June and on either 24th or 25th of June. We will confirm the date shortly. The workshops will address the themes which had been identified for the physical meeting back in March, but they will also offer a great opportunity to reflect on these themes in the context of the post-COVID challenges to come. The objective of these workshops is to articulate a series of recommendations which can inform the important global ocean gatherings which were planned for this year, but which are currently being rescheduled. For example, the UN Oceans Conference, the IUCN World Conservation Congress, and the Conference of the Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Before starting, I will take a quick look of today's agenda. His Serene Highness will give a welcome address. Then, Ms. Brune Poisson, Secretary of State to the Minister for the Ecological and Inclusive Transition of France, will deliver a keynote speech. Mr. Virginijus Sinkevicius, Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries at the European Commission, will then deliver a keynote speech via a recorded video. Then there will be a 45-minute exchange between our panelists today, moderated by Mr. José María Figueres Olsen. This will be followed by a 20-minute dialogue where participants will have the possibility to request to take the floor for a brief statement or question using the raise hand tool. We will provide more information on how this will work after the panel session. We now have the honor to welcome His Serene Highness to take the virtual floor. Monseigneur.
Thank you very much. Well, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's a pleasure for me to open this session, and thank you all for joining us. Throughout the first decade of the Monaco Blue Initiative and its existence, we have cultivated some great habits, and we honestly thought that we would last a very long time. With the coronavirus crisis, we now need to change most of our habits. We must forego the enjoyment of face-to-face meetings with political and economic leaders and scientific and environmental players to discuss issues we hold close to our hearts. The new setup not only changes the nature of our discussions with dialogue via interposed screens, it also modifies their content. I think it is safe to say that our discussions and ideas will, for a long time, be greatly marked by the crisis we are currently experiencing, and how could it be otherwise? Over a period of just a few weeks, we have seen our world change. We have also seen our oceans change. We have seen our minds change. This change, however long it lasts, brings about at least one certainty. Our world is not sacrosanct. We are even more vulnerable than we even thought. And we are collectively capable of change, including extremely rapid change. Consequently, I hope that this rather special edition of the Monaco Blue Initiative will take place under the banner of change. Change in how we work, obviously, but more importantly, a change in our attitude in regards to the marine environment and to marine resources. In this respect, I'd like to broach a few important points, if you would allow me, which are on the agenda of our meeting. Firstly, with regard to marine protected areas, MPAs, it is a case of considering them from a twofold point of view. From an international point of view, which means development and strengthening of them, both in number and in nature, and this needs to be discussed in multilateral fora. And from a more local point of view, the way that they are managed, where improvements should be made, and the need for greater involvement of the coastal populations concerned. Fundamental to these considerations is a very real need to develop marine protected areas much more efficiently than we have done so far. I'd like to remind you that 10 years ago, the international community pledged to place 10% of MPAs under protected status. Everyone agrees that we have not yet reached this target, while many even consider, and I share this opinion, that our target should be of 30% for the next decade. Moreover, there are very real economic opportunities offered by MPAs. As we know, this economic dimension is crucial to their success, and it justifies that the appropriate funds be allocated to them. In this context, I'm delighted that MedFund, the trust fund that we created in Monaco with France and Tunisia to develop marine protected areas in the Mediterranean, continues to grow. Only recently, we committed to funding amount to 1.8 million euros for the benefit of MPAs in Tunisia and Albania over the next 5 years. These funds will be allocated to local civil society or these organizations and national agencies in charge of protected areas. It will, I hope, give them the resources they need to ensure effective sustainable management practices. But the question we should also be asking is how effective the MPAs are. You know as well as I do how protective measures differ from one place to another, and in order for our actions to have an impact, we need to guarantee the actual level of these measures. And we need to adapt our conservation tools to the various ecosystems and threats that they face more effectively, and to ensure a better coordination between them. I therefore sincerely hope that our discussions will help and will help us to identify operational perspectives in this respect. The second point we will be discussing this afternoon, it concerns more generally the implementation of a genuine blue economy to reconcile the needs of humankind with those of the ocean. And to address these often conflicting challenges, I believe that the value of our work, once again, will come from our ability to look at things as practically as possible, basing ourselves on experience and observations, not being afraid to speak of failures and weaknesses, as well as of success stories. To know men, we must see them act. Jean-Jacques Rousseau once wrote. This applies just as much to our issues as it does to others, to be truly aware of our relationship with the ocean and to hope to change it. We need to see how we act toward the seas. This is the whole point of this Monaco Blue Initiative. Engage all the players involved in a constructive dialogue so that we can gain a better understanding of the issues that link the seas and humanity. And so that we are also able and better able to assess these actions we have undertaken and those we need to initiate in order to be more effective. This is how we will be able to place the oceans at the heart of our development paradigm. At a time when COVID-19 and its effects prompt us to rethink our world and compel us to change our priorities, I believe that these issues are still very relevant today. I'm therefore delighted that this Monaco Blue Initiative is being held despite the obvious constraints. I'd like to extend a special thanks to each and every one of you for agreeing to join us here today in these discussions. And I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Serene Highness, for these inspiring words. We are now very pleased to welcome Ms. Brune Poisson, Secretary of State to the Minister for the Ecological and Inclusive Transition of France. Please, Ms. Poisson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Monseigneur, Excellencies, distinguished representatives. It is an honor to be representing France in this first virtual panel of the Monaco Blue Initiative. Monseigneur, I have no words to thank you and your team for organizing this event. Your event has become one of the really key moments in the fight for the ocean. And so it's great that you've managed to keep it alive. Thank you very much. Over the last 50 years, our societies have really severely increased the pressure on natural resources. And one of the things that obviously that we've learned with the COVID-19 crisis is that it really has stressed the link and the whole idea of One Health. That is the link between human health, animal health, and natural health. And I think everybody, not I think, but scientists have shown us over the past few weeks, if not years, have shown us how all this is very strongly linked. And so we need to act even stronger in favor of the oceans. This is one of the reasons why France supports the targets of protecting 30% of land and oceans by 2030. One of the ways of achieving the objectives is by having countries that come together and push for that sort of strong and ambitious goals. And this is one of the reasons why we came with Costa Rica to actually come up with a high ambition coalition for nature and people whose aim is to gather a critical mass of countries to make sure that the adoption of the 30% target in the negotiations is actually doable and achievable. But this objective has to be supported in all international events and throughout every single important negotiations moment that are coming up. I'm thinking of obviously the IUCN Global Congress, which will now, the World Nature Congress, which is now due to take place in January in Marseille in France. But also we need to prepare for the Impact 5 event and of course for the COP15. 2020 was supposed to be a super year for biodiversity. More than ever, we need to keep that ambition and the coming months as important and critical months for biodiversity and the ocean. France is currently developing a national strategy for protected areas that aim at implementing the 30% target of protected area by 2022, with 1/3 under stronger protection measures. Considering the importance of the ocean in fighting climate change, for example, it is really urgent to increase the surface of and the proportion of maritime protected areas and to ensure a good management on a large scale. High seas now cover more than 60% of global oceans. and they represent many ecological significant areas. Yet, only 1.2% of the high seas is currently under protection. This is clearly insufficient. There is a lot of work that is yet to be done. In the Regional Seas Convention, France has submitted proposals to create 2 large-scale high seas marine protected areas under negotiation, the North Atlantic Current and Evlanos Seamount within the OSPAR Convention, and the East Antarctica Marine Protected Area in the Southern Ocean, so-called CAMLAR. I hope our efforts, together with the European Commission and partners, will finally pay off. And I know we have a commissioner, Cynthia Vigneus, who's actually very strongly pushing for that as well. So all the odds and all the opportunity is there, and I'm sure we can achieve a lot. But today, only 2 of these regional seas conventions have a mandate to create marine protected areas in high seas. This is why the future and the upcoming, I say upcoming on purpose, global agreement, BBNG, is absolutely crucial if we are to cover all areas beyond national jurisdiction, and if we are to create a representative and well-managed network of MPAs in these remote and fragile areas. The ocean is our global common for which we all have a joint and common responsibility for the benefit of all humankind. This is why France supports the conclusion of an ambitious and the signing of an ambitious agreement, and we hope that all the United Nations member states will become a party to it. I think this COVID-19 crisis has shown us more than ever, just like I started, that the One Health approach is something that we should strive for. And I know we can do that collectively. This is why I want to thank you again for your invitation, for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of France during this important international event. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Poisson, for providing such a thoughtful keynote. We are now very pleased to welcome Commissioner Sinkevičius, thanks to a video recorded yesterday specifically for this meeting.
Your Serene Highness, Secretary of State, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for organizing this virtual dialogue and for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. As we are fighting to get out of the largest health crisis of this generation on land, we should remain aware that below the surface another crisis is looming, that of the marine environment. Also, this crisis deserves our utmost attention. A healthy ocean is prerequisite for our own health and for that of our planet. The timing of this event is excellent. Just a week ago, the European Commission published its EU Biodiversity Strategy, a major deliverable under the European Green Deal. It is an ambitious strategy based on our conviction that we cannot treat the biodiversity crisis in isolation, that it is linked to other pressures from human activities such as overexploitation, pollution, or global warming. Those pressures cannot be tackled only at national level or with sectoral views. They require a regional vision, even a global one. Last year, the report of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services opened the eyes of many. It showed that marine biodiversity is declining at unprecedented rates, that human activity is root cause of this development, and the climate change only exacerbates the situation. We know that one of the most effective ways to address the biodiversity and climate emergencies at once is by taking nature-based solutions. That includes marine protected areas and other effective conservation measures. Already in 2010, under the Convention on Biological Diversity, and again in 2015 under SDG 14, the global community has committed to conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas by 2020. The EU has formally reached this target for a few years now, although key challenges remain. Globally too, we are seeing progress. National and regional approaches for marine protected areas are being developed. Various sectors and stakeholders are setting up collaborative management and partnerships. This has clearly helped advance the conservation and management of oceans. Nevertheless, with a global marine protected area coverage of 7.5% and even smaller percentage effectively managed, and close to zero protection in the high seas, we are clearly missing our target for 2020. 10 years after our initial commitment, this is unacceptable. All the more because meanwhile pressures on oceans are increasing. Scientists tell us that we are approaching several tipping points, that the 10% we have failed to achieve is no longer sufficient. They estimate that unless we reach a critical coverage, together with proper connectivity between areas, the system of marine protected areas will simply not work. We should have the courage to listen to science, make game-changing decisions, and most of all, act on those decisions. With the new Biodiversity Strategy, the European Commission is doing just that. We propose to increase the EU's network of marine protected areas and other effective conservation measures by 19% over the next 10 years, leading to 30% by 2030. A substantial part of this network, which is of very high biodiversity value or potential, should be strictly protected. Still, this year, we will put guidance for identifying and designating additional areas, including a definition of strict protection as well as for the adequate management planning. Achieving this target will not be easy, especially now that the pandemic is taking a toll on our economies and national budgets. It will require the commitment from member states to implement concrete measures supported by sufficient financing from public and private sources. Protecting and restoring marine ecosystems should go hand in hand with reducing the overall EU footprint on the marine environment, including through managing land sustainably and focusing on the environmental sustainability of all blue economy sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, you have understood that what the European Commission proposes is no less than a transition towards a biodiversity-friendly society. Achieving this is one of the highest priorities for me as a commissioner. And what we preach within our borders should be reflected in our global ambitions. This should clearly address the drivers of marine biodiversity loss, such as changes in sea use, overexploitation, climate change, pollution, and invasive alien species. In that context, the EU's international ocean governance policy becomes even more important. Our approach to marine protected areas should be guided by the following lines. Firstly, we need to consolidate the progress achieved so far. The protected areas already designated cannot remain abstractions. They require management plans. They have to be implemented in full, and they have to be monitored. In parallel, we need to expand the network, in particular to cover the sensitive areas of the high seas. There are some success stories in recent years. The establishment of the world's largest high seas marine protected area in the Antarctic, Ross Sea, comes to mind. But we are still far from the representative network of marine protected areas we agreed to 10 years ago. We will reinvigorate our political and diplomatic efforts, working through our green diplomacy network to call on all members of the international community to take their responsibility and live up to our shared commitment to protect the world's oceans. Another major strand of our international efforts are the negotiations on international legally binding instrument under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to conserve and sustainably use marine biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdictions. If we succeed, it will be one of the most significant achievements in ocean governance of our times. Ladies and gentlemen, Next year, we'll have the responsibility to adopt a new global framework for biodiversity at the 15th Conference of the Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I will make sure that the oceans get the attention they deserve. Our ultimate goal should be that by 2050, at the latest, all marine ecosystems are healthy, resilient, and able to deliver the ecosystem services on which we so strongly depend. To get there, we should aim at 30% of all marine waters to be governed by protected areas or other conservation measures by 2030. But when negotiating, we should also draw lessons from Aichi. Targets have to be unambiguous, measurable, and based on reliable science. We need clear baselines and data underpinning the monitoring and review of progress. In addition, obtaining a global agreement will require responding to the sensitivities of our partners at the table, in particular developing countries. This includes the mobilization of financial resources, capacity building, ensuring food security, and finding a solution to the issue of the sharing of the benefits from the use of genetic resources linked to biodiversity. It also includes respect for the rights and the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities. There should be an inclusive approach with participation of all stakeholders, including women, youth, civil society, local authorities, the private sector, academia, and scientific institutions. Only strong, multilateral cooperation and coordination based on mutual trust and awareness of our common destiny will enable us to progress on these issues and strike the right balance in the interest of all. Ladies and gentlemen, our oceans are in peril, but we have robust knowledge and evidence of the problem, and we understand the means to address it. We have proven during the last months that we can do remarkable things. Let's show the same fighting spirit to save nature. Let's join forces to enable the transformative change we need. Together, we can protect the oceans and preserve the quality and continuity of all life on Earth. Thank you.
A very warm thank you to Commissioner Sinkevicius for this keynote speech. It is now time to move on to today's panel discussion. How can we place marine protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures at the center of international discussions and act collectively for their development? We are very fortunate to hear from an impressive panel of speakers today. Pierre, can I have the slide, please? Bear with us while we, thank you. As our moderator today, we have Mr. Jose Maria Figueres Olsen, former president of Costa Rica and co-founder of Ocean Unite. Many thanks, Jose. Our distinguished panelists are Dr. Enric Sala, explorer in residence at National Geographic, Ms. Sabine Jessen, executive director of the Impact 5 Secretariat, Dr. Atsushi Tsunami, President, Ocean Policy Research of Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Japan, and Ms. Shirley Binder, the National Director of Environmental Policy at the Ministry of Environment of Panama, and also an Edinburgh 2020 Ocean Leader. And His Excellency, Mr. Serge Segura, Ambassador of France to the ocean. Thank you all very much for participating today. Before giving the floor to Jose and the panelists, we kindly remind all of our attendees that we will take questions only after this panel discussion. Please, Jose, the floor is yours for the, and yeah, please go ahead. Thank you. And please open your microphone. Or we. We will open the microphone on our side.
I have the microphone open on my side.
It's okay. We can hear you very well. Thank you.
You can, very well. Thank you. So Muy buenas tardes, buenos días y buenas noches, amigas y amigos. Your Serene Highness, apreciado Monseñor y querido amigo, thank you so much for inviting us back to Monaco. In your words, we feel the warmth of your welcome as if we were there with you, always listening to your inspired leadership, but that just in this case, doing it virtually, think of all the carbon emissions that we're saving. Thank you so much, Madam Secretary of State Poisson, for your very inspiring message and for what France is doing in its leadership role. Particularly, I would point out your leadership on the East Antarctica MPA, which I hope we will be talking about a little bit later, and for the work that France and Costa Rica are doing together. And thank you, Commissioner Sinkevicius, for your very, very detailed and inspiring words. Thank you all participants. You are joining us really from across the ocean. I know we have participants in the Americas, here in Europe, and also in Asia. And we very much thank you for being here with us and look forward to your questions and comments right after we have heard from our panelists. So the way we're going to run this is that after a few introductory comments, as moderator of this session, we will turn to our panelists. They will each address us for 6 to 8 minutes. And then after that, we will open it up to your questions and your comments. If I may begin my introductory comments, I would say that I would like to frame this conversation on marine protected areas and other ways of ensuring that we protect the ocean by reminding ourselves of what we have already heard here in the session, which is the importance of achieving 30% of the ocean protected by the year 2030. It is one of the major objectives of SDG 14, and we certainly have a decade ahead in which to be able to fulfill that commitment with respect to ourselves. This was going to be, of course, a year of the ocean. We had high hopes and expectations for the many different events at which we would not only be able to network, recharge our batteries to go out and continue to do battle for the ocean, but of course also achieve significant advancements with respect to 30 by 30. The Monaco gathering, which is now in virtual form, is one of them. The UN Our Ocean Summit that would have come up in only a couple of weeks in Portugal is another one. Of course, the Convention on Biodiversity, COP15, was a very important coming together to be able to push the agenda of ocean conservation and biodiversity. And then COP26 towards the end of the year, because the ocean is being recognized more and more as the other side of the coin of climate change. But what I would propose here, colleagues, is that we go through this year independently of the crisis, and we still make this a very important year for the ocean. There are 4 elements that I believe we can strengthen as we continue to pursue our agenda. The first one is that the science is saying every day in a better and clearer way that if 1.5 degrees centigrades should not be surpassed with respect to climate change, we should not conserve less than 30% of the ocean, as has been stated by Commissioner Sinkevicius. The second element is that we have a very clear EU strategy on biodiversity. That was again mentioned by the commissioner that just came out about a week ago, and it has very concrete and specific language with respect to the support of the EU to 30 by 30 and also to the creation of the Antarctic MPAs. The third element that I would point out to, talking about Antarctica, is that this year we celebrate 200 years of the discovery of Antarctica. And what better way to conserve that continent in its pristine shape and fashion than to protect the entire ocean around it. And the fourth element that I would point out is that we have the BBNJ negotiations still in front of us. And I actually think that having postponed them from coming together in April to a later date should serve to raise our ambitions with respect to BBNJ, which is such a critical and missing component of UNCLOS, the law of the seas. So, challenging times ahead of us, yes, but full of opportunities to continue to make this a very strong show for the ocean. Let me turn now to our discussion leaders. And I would like to begin with you, Ambassador Segura, if I may. You are France's Ocean Ambassador. And I would like to ask you if in these times of crisis and economic uncertainty, what are you seeing out there in terms of the political advancement of these issues? How are we achieving progress at national or regional or international negotiations? I think we have to take you off mute, Mr. Ambassador. We're anxious to hear your words, but you're still on mute. Can we unmute the ambassador from the Secretariat? Yes, can we unmute the ambassador from the organizers, please? Do we have a way of doing that?
Yes, I am clicking, and Ambassador Segura, do you get a message that you can accept? I think you have to accept now.
Okay, it should work now. Thank you to the organizer to unmute me. Thank you, Jose Maria, for this question. It's not an easy one, as you can imagine, and I'll try to answer the best I can in the 7 minutes. First of all, I would like to thank Monaco and Monseigneur particularly, and all the Friends of Monaco Blue Initiative to go on with the aim of advancing and to make progress in this protection of the ocean. So what is the international community? It's not so easy to answer. Traditionally, we think it's states and international organization. Nowadays, it's not enough to say this. And I just would like to mention that for me, international community is also civil society, public opinions, and that's important because they have a role to play. I will not try to say what can be done in the next month or in the next years. The only thing is to realize that we have the possibilities to do something. And I would like to enumerate a few of these possibilities to show that if there is political will to advance, we will reach something. So the year 2020, I remember well, just at the end of last year, all the projects that were made for this year 2020. It should have been the year of the ocean, the year of the biodiversity, and it will remain as the year of the pandemic. So that shows the health crisis, that shows that nothing is never sure, and that we have to be willing to reach good results. But what is very worrying now is that we know that what will be serious next year will be the economic crisis, and that we have a few ways to find solution to this economic crisis that is announced, and these ways must be green, and that means blue also. That's a possibility to act in a good way and to use this economic crisis to act in a good way. So I think that in spite of the situation we face today, we must not be too pessimistic. First of all, if we take all the big meeting that should have been organized this year, we realize that almost none has been cancelled. They are postponed, And there is a will, I realize that there is a will to do them as soon as possible. For example, we have received from Palau a few days ago the information that our ocean meeting will take place beginning of December. And we cross fingers in order to make it possible. We know that BBNJ fourth session will take place probably at the very end of this year or at the very beginning of next year. And we know also that there are a lot of efforts which are made to use this intersessional period. The CBD meeting, COP15, will take place next year. Lisbon on SDG 14 will take place next year also. And Mrs. Poisson said a few minutes ago that the IUCN Congress in Marseille will take place in January, so it's not so far from here. That's the first point to remind. Everything will go on with a few months late. Every state, as France, has a different leverage to its disposal to promote some tools of protection, among which MPA, because I think that we have to speak about different tools of protection. Many decisions can be taken on a very strict national basis. When you deal with your internal waters, with your territorial waters, or with your EEZ, you can take all decisions you want if they are in accordance with law of the sea. And that has been the case already in France, and as Mrs. Poisson explained also, that our objective for 2022, we are not very far from this, is to reach the level of 30% of protected areas, and among which 10% will be in a strict regime for protection. So that's something that everyone can do if every state wants to do it. But what is important for a country as mine is to promote multilateralism, particularly when we speak about protection of biodiversity and protection of the ocean. We have tools, as I said at the beginning, which are still working, and we will work more next year. First of all, let's take, for example, some international organization, the sectorial one, as IMO. There is a possibility to create new zones, protected zones. I think it's called in IMO particularly sensitive sea areas that has been existing for a long time, and it still exists. You have also the RFMOs, very often criticized, but we know that there are tools among RFMOs that can be used, moratorium, different season for fishing, and so on. And this can be developed by member states of these RFMOs. And there is also, for example, the International Seabed Authorities, whose mining code has been delayed because of environmental necessity to put things in it to protect the ocean. So I will not extend myself on the work made by regional sea conventions, Barcelona, Camela, Rospar, just to remind what Mrs. Poisson said about what has been done in the Antarctic, for example. But we can be optimistic that because there are projects on the table, but we can be pessimistic because we realize the difficulty to make this project succeed when there is not enough political will among states. And we have spoken already about the BBNJ, and we can hope that the fourth session will be a successful beginning of 2021. I think that for many years already, states have been trying to find new ways. We are speaking about many initiatives, coalitions, and so on. France is participating to many of them with many different countries. The only fear I have is to have too many possibilities, and perhaps we should try to join some of these coalition or initiatives to be more powerful, to be more efficient. And we must not forget that bilaterally, states can do things, even between developed countries. We have an example with Japan, for example. France and Japan has entered in a maritime global dialogue in which there is a specific chapter on how to make and how to progress in making marine protected areas. And we are trying to enter in a specific cooperation with India, for example, so between developed country and developing state, in order to exchange ideas about how to build legislation and how to create new MPA. So there are many ways. I don't have to spend more time on each of them. Many states, many possibilities for states to be in the action. They must not forget to work with the civil society. This is an evidence, but it has to be reminded, because sometimes in international meetings, you realize that civil society is not as present as it should be, and that must be, that can be the difficulty. And I would like to remind that we cannot say that we need to invent new ways of cooperation. All the possibilities are on the table, can work if there is a political will to make them work. I hope I was in a good time. Thank you.
Unmuted. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your comments in this respect here. So, Sabine, I would like to go to you. You are the Executive Director of Impact 5, but equally important, you have been very much at the forefront of how Canada has been able to handle and derive policy for MPAs and other conservation measures. Can you share positive notes about that experience, and can you also share lessons learned? Some may be good, some may not be so good, that other countries could follow as we move forward towards 30 by 30.
Thank you very much. Am I unmuted? Yes, it looks like I am. Thank you very much. I'm going to be happy to address that question. And I also would like to thank His Serene Highness and the Monaco Blue Initiative for making this possible, even though I think we all wish we could be together in person in the beautiful Oceanographic Museum on the glorious Mediterranean Sea. So I have many fond memories from last year being there, and I know we all miss that sort of more personal contact in these crazy times. I'm going to reflect back a little bit on my 25 years, I can't believe it's been that long experience with working on marine protected areas in Canada. And just say that, you know, the global work we're trying to do and the work we've been doing in Canada, this is so critical to life on Earth. And I think we need to really remember just how important it is that we do far more to protect biodiversity in the ocean. And, you know, some of the key lessons, just to jump forward a bit, I mean, it's been very clear in Canada in terms of the progress we've been able to make, that political will and a clear plan to get there are just absolutely underpin the progress that we've been able to make and that have been made and elsewhere, both nationally and internationally. And having those targets to strive for really sets a bar. So I'm pleased to see that 30% by 2030 is becoming you know, what people are looking towards, and was really pleased to hear the work that the European Commission is moving ahead on. And for us, that political will and a plan have been particularly critical over the last 5 years. And another part of that progress that we've been making has been to use the new tool, the other effective conservation measures that have been talked about. And they can provide key opportunities to define and designate new areas, as well as recognizing existing sites. And I'm going to end my remarks by talking a bit about Impact 5. So I will just say that most of my career has been spent working for a national NGO in Canada, the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, or CPAWS. where I led the National Ocean Conservation Program and worked with many other NGOs in Canada to advance marine protected areas. So I'm a very recent member of the Canadian Civil Service, only since last summer, less than a year, and I have the exciting task of spearheading the organization of Impact 5, which I'll come back to at the end. So for many years, I'd say Canada was quite stalled at less than 1% protection of our EEZ. And achieving each fraction of a percent was a long, arduous, and at times difficult process. And it really wasn't until 2015 that we really saw the political will and commitment from our Prime Minister and his cabinet that was in turn supported by a clear plan to achieve the ACHI target. The ambassador mentioned the key role of civil society, and I think that, and I'll say we, because at the time that's where I was, we did play a critical role in both recommending the approach and supporting the efforts, in mobilizing public support, which has been very strong across Canada for marine protected areas. And in addition to having the commitment and a plan, we had a strong budget commitment as well, and tremendous effort. I really have to acknowledge the work by Canada's civil service in making sure that the work got done. And it was a lot of work to get from 1 to where we're at now. We've reached and exceeded in August last year, we reached 14% protection in Canada. So, you know, a year ahead of schedule of the ACHI target. And this amounts to, because of the size of Canada's EEZ, it amounts to 800,000 square kilometers on our Arctic, Atlantic, and Pacific coasts. So I mentioned earlier that, in addition to the things that I mentioned, the political will, the plan, the budget, we also embarked on new policy and legislative initiatives. And I won't touch on all of them, but I'll mention 2. One that was a personal issue for me, and others have talked about the need to make sure that our marine protected areas and the other measures that we put in place, that they are effective. And one complaint that we had in civil society was that there were no even minimum standards for what would be allowed or not inside our marine protected areas. And so one of the initiatives was to develop national standards, and which has resulted in a blanket prohibitions across all marine protected areas in Canada that they cannot have, and surprisingly that this needed to be done, but that they can't have oil and gas development, bottom trawling, or dumping. And obviously other measures will be put in place for other sites, but that is an absolute bottom line. And that was again a 20-year fight to get that in place. And then the second.
Sabine?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I know that I hate to interrupt. I'm very sorry about this, but I know that Enrique Sala has a hard stop at 1600, which is 5 minutes from now,
Right.
because he has to brief francophone ministers on 30 by 30. Would you mind if we allow Enrique Sala to come in and then I come back to you right away?
Sure. I wish I just changed the order, but okay.
I'm so sorry. We're still to hear from you about the second measure.
Yeah.
Enrique.
Okay, can you hear me?
Enrique, we can hear you. Pristine seas, have they been a positive example for nations to enact policy moving to MPAs?
Sí, muchas gracias, José María. Monseigneur, dear friends. Yes, Pristine Seas is the largest exploration, research, and conservation project of the National Geographic Society, and its goal is to work with governments and communities to protect the last wild places in the ocean. And we're very fortunate that His Serene Highness is the chair of our advisory board, and José María also is a member. In the last 10 years, we've been able to work with partners, communities, and governments to help create 22 of the largest marine protected areas in the ocean, 21 of which are fully protected. They are no-take areas without fishing or any other extractive activities. And what we have seen is that the creation of these large MPAs, so the fully protected MPAs, has changed the social norms. Now, it is 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would have been unthinkable that country leaders would brag about protecting large areas of the ocean from extractive activities. But now this is not only possible, and it has been shown economically beneficial, but also it's fashionable. And in the last decade, we have seen healthy competition among country leaders to create protected areas in key ocean areas. But now with the COVID pandemic, we hear that, well, now the environment is not the most important thing now. Now we need to take care of people in need, to take care of the economy, which is absolutely essential. But we cannot forget what the origin of this pandemic is, which is basically our broken relationship with nature. So marine protected areas today are more important than ever, especially these fully protected areas that provide the greatest benefits. And many people don't understand that to get more of the ocean, you have to protect it strictly. And we have economic research shows that the economic value of an area after protection is at least 4 times greater than a protected area that allows fishing or the unprotected counterfactual. So right now we can follow the example of these countries that have already led the way. And I believe that this 30% is possible because we have seen it. We have worked with countries like Palau, 80% of their waters protected. Seychelles, 30% of their waters protected. Niue, 40% of their waters protected. And I like to use the example of Chile because Chile is a fishing country. It's a big fishing country. When we started working with Chile in 2010, less than 1% of their exclusive economic zone was in fully protected MPAs. Today, they have 24% in fully protected MPAs. Chile, again, is a fishing country, but they realized that there is no future to their coastal economies, there is no future to fishing unless we set aside areas that will help replenish the rest of the ocean. So I think that what we have seen, we've been lucky to see with in the last 10 years with pristine seas and the countries we have worked with, is this leadership. So these leading countries have already shown the way. This is what makes me hopeful. This is why I think that 30% is possible, because some countries have already done it and the rest of the world just has to follow.
Enrique, thank you very much. Thank you for participating and for your leadership on Pristine Seas, everything you do, and go brief the ministers on 30 by 30. So
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. So Sabine, I'm so sorry again. Let's come back, please, if we may. And I'm really, really sorry about this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got Enrique in. So please, let's come back.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and pick up the thread. My second point was really around other effective conservation measures, and Canada was really at the forefront of using those and in helping to develop the international guidance, both through the IUCN task force and through the CBD process. And we are now in the process of revising our policy and reviewing all the sites so that they will be consistent with that. And, you know, I think they are a really important tool and provide an important opportunity to protect places that might not fit the definition of a protected area, but still make effective contributions to the conservation of biodiversity. So I was pleased to be personally involved in some of those efforts as well. You know, I do think that they are an important tool that we need to use alongside as part of developing broader conservation initiatives with marine protected areas. I would like to note that in Canada, we are also learning, and others have mentioned, the important role of Indigenous peoples and the importance of using traditional knowledge as we define and manage our MPAs, and we're working in partnership with them to ensure that new MPAs are the basis of strong local conservation economies, and we really hope to showcase some inspiring examples of Indigenous leadership on MPAs at Impact 5. And I should also mention that, you know, as part of the commitment that our government made in 2019 when it was re-elected, is that Canada intends to play, you know, a strong international role in promoting 30% by 2030. And as part of developing our national plan, we will be basing that on science Indigenous knowledge, and local perspectives. So all of those will need to come into play as we move from the 14% we have to the 30%. And then finally, I want to say that Canada is pleased to be welcoming the world to Vancouver in September 2021 for Impact 5. Of course, we hope that it will find us in a post-pandemic world so that we can come together in person, fingers crossed. And we are also making plans for a significant virtual component so that we can, regardless of the situation, be able to welcome people from every corner of the world who are passionate about marine protected areas. And we are pleased to be hosting Impact 5 with our partners, IUCN and CPAWS, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. And we really hope that we can not only at Impact 5 kind of celebrate and learn from what we've achieved until then, but also look at how do we develop that global roadmap for meeting 30% by 2030. So we'll be working in the meantime to promote that 30%, and we look forward to welcoming the world to Vancouver in 2021. Thank you very much. Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Thank you. Sabine, thank you so very much. And again, my apology. You've been very gracious. And it is very early for you in the morning. So thank you. Atsushi Tsunami, as all of our distinguished discussion leaders here, you come with at least two hats to this conversation. On the one side, you're the president of the Ocean Policy Research Institute of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. But on the other side, you have been a member of the advisory board of the Arctic Circle. And I often refer to the Arctic and the Antarctic in a way as the lungs of the ocean. We need those two areas to be healthy, to have a healthy and resilient ocean. I would like to ask for you to share with us an Asian perspective on MPAs and other ways of protecting the ocean. Some countries have been arguing in the context of the BBNG conversations, discussions, that for them it would be very difficult to be able to declare 30% of their waters as an MPA. But if we could take a larger section of the high seas as an MPA from where to replenish the EEZs of 144 nations around the world, it seems to me that it would also be a fantastic equity issue. At the same time, Asia has 5 countries that are fishing in the high seas of only about 12 or so nations. So what is the Asian perspective on MPAs? How do we move this agenda forward? How do you help us achieve 30 by 30, Atsushi?
Thank you, Jose. I think I'm okay.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Okay, good. Well, first of all, I'd like to join the previous speakers to thank the organizers and Oceanographic Institute and the Prince Albert Foundation, in particular with His Serene Highness Prince Albert II, for actually hosting this very important webinar in the time of the difficulties and keep the sort of the spirit of the 11th Monaco Blue Initiative that's been canceled because of the COVID-19. Let me sort of briefly comment on the sort of the leadership that you asked on the role of, and particularly sort of shedding light on the role of science for upscaling the marine protected areas to the proposed level of 30% by 2030. We need to raise the profile of this matter to the highest level of the decision-making process, as we have been discussing so far. For instance, when Japan hosted the G20 summit in Osaka last year, we have worked with our government on putting the ocean and IUU fishing control or marine plastics and blue carbon, for instance, were to be discussed as a priority policy issues. And we need to continue to address the conversation and sustainable role of marine resources as a priority policy agenda at the summit meetings attended by the heads of the states around the world. And well, we are now collaborating with the scientists in Saudi Arabia to try to continue this high-level dialogue on ocean issues at the G20 meeting scheduled in November over there this year. We need to keep pushing ocean issues as a priority agenda at the series of summit meetings in order for our leaders to argue upon the ambitious post-IG target and to reaffirm the political commitment to adopting, as you mentioned, the BBNJ agreement. And to support the high-level decision-making, I'd like to underline the importance of promoting science and policy interface. Once again, the sort of the precautionary approach will continue to be our guiding principle. And at the same time, though, we need to promote a science evidence-based policies. So to introduce marine protected areas or area-based management tools, we need to have proper assessment on marine biodiversity and ecosystem services and values and risks and future challenges. And the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, as we all know that it's going to be very important starting from the next year, provides a useful platform for us to strengthen interdisciplinary scientific research and promote international cooperation for capacity development. And standardizing and monitoring method is an important task. And we need to promote the innovation, visualization, and information disclosure, multiple use of technologies, including satellite data and aerial and underwater drones and supersonic wave and infrared radiation for visualization, ocean, and disclosing information. So we need to promote a holistic, comprehensive approach by linking existing schemes and creating synergies by building upon the ecologically or biologically significant marine areas called EBSAs, or the Convention on Biological Diversity and Vulnerable Marine Ecosystems of FMO, and regional fishery management organizations and others of the International Seabed Authority, as Ambassador mentioned, and International Maritime Organization, and as you mentioned, the Antarctica and Arctic. And high sea MPAs by CAMLA, the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, set a useful example, I think, and for the further review of the additional MPA proposals. The provision of scientific data and its sharing will help creating a framework conducive to optimal decision making. The platform of the scientific community for promoting scientific research and sharing the data will play a vital role in bringing major stakeholders, including China and Russia and others in constructive discussions, and particularly in my part of the world, or Asia is concerned. And this is also true for the case of establishing the Arctic fishing moratorium in 2017. The international regime for the Arctic that created a basis for scientific assessment enabled Arctic Council members, plus observer states like Japan, China, and South Korea, to agree upon the fishing moratorium. And Japan, China, and South Korea agreed to support the enhancement of the exchange of information from Arctic expeditions, such as Synoptic Arctic Survey planned in summer 2020. So I also add that we should also relate this with the WTO negotiation and the discipline for eliminating harmful subsidies to overfishing and higher fishing as well. So let me, well, last but not least, for instance, for our institute, OPRI, is engaging the track 1.5 dialogues with the colleagues and partners, hoping to make useful contribution to the high-level decision-making, effective policy implementation. So we hope to host the Arctic Science Ministerial Meeting and the Arctic Circle Japan Forum in Tokyo in 2021, and hope to advance the dialogue with the major stakeholders from the Arctic. We have had a dialogues with our partners, for instance, China, East Asia countries, Southeast Asian, and the Pacific, and as Ambassador Segura mentioned, with France, to address the policies for achieving sustainable ocean. And recently, we have collaborated with various African countries in addressing the issue of MPAs and the management of the ocean at the TICAD meeting in Tokyo. And I'm particularly pleased to be with Ambassador France, who mentioned about the dialogue, who was with us in Tokyo in 2018, and New Caledonia last year for our bilateral policy dialogues. So we are working with the government of Palau, for instance, for preparing our ocean conference in December, where we will be discussing how to implement effectively of the MPAs around the South Pacific island states. So this is going to be very important for us to raise this issue, to find our own way to effective ways to manage this.
Sushi, I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
Okay.
So I want to closing remarks, 15, 20 seconds.
Sure, thank you. So I just want to reiterate some of the sort of the things that we do in terms of more bilaterally and more regionally in Asia, and we need to have our own sort of our way to approach this issue at the highest level. So, and the science and policy interface as I have discussed. So thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Atsushi, for sharing generously. And let me turn to Shirley Binder. So you're the National Director of Environmental Policy at the Ministry of Environment in Panama, and you are also an Edinburgh 2020 Ocean Leader. Shirley, one of the things that is often overlooked when we are attempting to enlarge or create MPAs is, of course, the involvement of civil society. So you have ample experience in that. Please share it with us.
Yeah, so do you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's great. So thank you so much, and a special thanks to His Serene Highness and the organizing team of the first online MBI, as well as the University of Edinburgh for the Ocean Leaders Program, which I'm part of. So in Panama, we have exceeded the 10% target, and we have almost 14% of our waters as MPAs. But we still need to change the way these MPAs are created and implemented. As related to what His Serene Highness said, we need to start involving more communities, and this is something that is around the world. We need to involve and empower the coastal communities and show these coastal communities how the proper creation of MPAs will benefit them both economically and their livelihoods in some way. So in one of the Ocean Leader sessions, we were talking about the rights of the ocean. And it's a pretty concept, but it's really difficult to implement if we don't show how that right will benefit human rights, will benefit the people. So, and how, for example, how controlling the high seas and implementing different measurements to conserve the high seas will benefit those fishermen, those inland fishermen that are affected because of this giant fleets that are outside in the high seas. So this is how we see the implementation of ocean rights, related that ocean rights to communities and to people. So when an MPA is created or enlarged, as I said, it needs to be based on science, and it needs to have the proof that it will benefit as a community. The hard thing is that when an MPA is created, you don't see the benefit in a year or 2 years. You see the benefit after a while. So that's that's the difficult part of educating and empowering these communities, that in countries like mine and countries in a lot of countries of Latin America, people around coastal zones are not highly educated. So we as a government, we need to empower them, and we need to educate them with this information. So before COVID-19 started, the tourism in marine protected areas here in Panama was increasing, and it's clearly for a lot of communities clearly shown how this big protected area, especially for example Koiwa National Park, which I'll talk later on my intervention, it's giving economic benefits to the community. A lot of fishermen that before a lot of people that before they were fishermen, now they are tourist guides. But this is under threat because of COVID-19, as the tourism industry will not activate at first. So we have that thread of these people coming back to being fishermen and increasing the fishing efforts in our waters. So that's something that our government needs to have in mind when we started reactivating the economy. So actually we right now are in complete lockdown until the 1st of June. So this is something we need to take into account. In Panama, we have something called community-based organizations. Since a couple of years ago, the Ministry of Environment have the possibility of giving this community-based organization a legal status for them to work together with the Ministry of Environment, with us, in implementing MPAs. So in having different tourism activities, sustainable tourism activities, and protecting the area. If the community sees, like has been happening in Koiwa National Park, if the community sees the benefit, they are going to take care of the protected area. We could have thousands of policemen, thousands of park rangers, but if the community is not on board with the protected area, it's probably not going to work as well, and probably not going to be implemented as well. So another role of communities is the role of, and civil society as well, it's the role of asking the government to create the protected area. And I think Sabine touched a little bit on that, how the civil society needs to push for the creation of protected areas, but with science-based. So, and now I would jump to the other thing that I want to touch on, and it's in the connectivity of protected areas, and in the protected areas that have international importance, like Koiwa National Park, for example. Koiwa National Park, it's part of the Eastern Tropical Pacific Corridor, which is composed of Cocos in Costa Rica, Galapagos in Ecuador, and Malpelo in Colombia. And these parks are the core areas of the CEMAR, it's called in Spanish, or the ETP, the Eastern Tropical Pacific Corridor. But the migratory routes are not as protected as these parks. So during the last years, science have been pushing to know what's happening with the species, how the species behavior and their movement, in order to conserve more areas and to put also fishery management to protect these species. So for example, in the last couple of years, Panama created a new area in this swimway, the Cordillera de Koiwa, which is together with Colombia in the map, with Yurupari Malpelo, which is another area of conservation of Colombia that it was created, I think 2015 or 16. So these two areas are connected in a map. And right now we are working together. We have started conversations with the government of Colombia in order to share best practices and to share the management of these areas, as it's in the map are separated, but in real life, in ecology, there's no separation. So the species move within one another. And these types of scenarios and these types of opportunities to share knowledge and to talk with different governments, it's important, and especially it's important not to avoid costly mistakes, to avoid reinventing the wheel and doing the mistakes that another country has already tried. So I think to close, this countries need to see the creation of protected areas and the conservation of species in a holistic manner, especially in when talking about oceans. Policy needs to think not only about the country, but about the benefit of conserving for the world and for the region. And well, lastly, I wanna close saying that hopefully Palau will have the Ocean Conference in December, and then next year in 2021, our Ocean Conference will hopefully be here in Panama. And we have been, sadly, our economy, it's based on the ocean, it's based on our Panama Canal, which is directly affected by climate change. The increasing seas, the opening of new routes because of the Arctic melting. So for us, oceans are a priority now. We pushed during the last COP25 for oceans to be included in the text, and well, it was included, not as it should have. I think the language of the text was a little weak, but I think it was the first step in having oceans being the climate regulators, the largest climate regulators in the text. So yeah.
Shirley, thank you very much. Very, very kind of you to share these concepts with us. So now we have some few minutes remaining, unfortunately less than we would have liked to. But we've had a good conversation and great interventions by our discussion leaders. Let's open it up to questions. I understand that we can have questions from the audience via raising the hand or the chat tool, and that our secretariat will administer that process.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so very much to all of you. Jose, the panelists, this was a great, excellent discussion. So just as a reminder, we would prefer to use the raise hand tool, but you can also use the chat, as Jose just said. We would like this to mirror as much as possible as the true Monaco Blue initiative. So we would like to, if possible, have the person see the person who's speaking. So in order to do that, we will introduce the person who would speak, and then we would turn that person into a panelist so that you can use your camera, hopefully. If it doesn't work, just go on with audio. Please keep in mind to introduce yourselves and kindly also indicate to whom in the panel your question or comment is addressed, if applicable. And we can run over time a little bit, but we would limit the discussion to around 10 minutes or so. So we ask you to be as brief and to the point as possible. Thank you very much. So I think we have a first intervention from Elizabeth Marima, CBD. First of all, I'm trying to, yes, so I will turn you into a panelist, and hopefully can you accept the invitation to share your video, Elizabeth? If not, please just go on with the audio. Okay. It's coming. There is a little bit of a delay. Thank you all for your patience. Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Perfect.
Now we can hear you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, for the organizers of this event, His Highness, also for leading us in this discussion, and all the panelists. Area-based conservation, including marine protected areas, has been a major focus for the parties to the convention, and has been considered as the most effective tool for protecting biodiversity, ecological functions, as well as services that it provides. The parties have been still protected areas, effective area conservation measures is one of the 20 biodiversity targets adopted 10 years ago, particularly under Aichi Target 11, which calls for 10% of the coastal marine areas to be conserved through protected areas and other effective area-based measures. We know that Target 11 has a deadline of this year, has already acknowledged one of the most successful Aichi targets. It has succeeded to catalyze enormous political commitment, action, and support for conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity at all levels and from all stakeholders. More than 17% of the areas within national jurisdiction and roughly 7% of the global oceans currently designated as protected areas, and many commitments for further protection we know are underway. We still have time to fully achieve not only the 10% elements of Target 11 and SDG 14, but also the qualitative elements of Target 11 as well, including ecological representativeness, effectiveness, equitable management, and connectivity. But now, with the end of the Aichi targets and SDG 14.5 upon us, the parties are in the process now of negotiating the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which is designed to bring all players together around the world to really reverse the negative trends in biodiversity loss. This framework, we hope, will incorporate ambitious targets and goals for the oceans. We hope it will enshrine and solidify the political commitment for conserving our precious ocean ecosystems, but we hope it will also ensure that oceans can continue to play its major role in supporting livelihood, food security, economic growth, and social well-being. We hope also it will catalyze actions by all facets of the society and be able to reevaluate our relationship with the natural environment. And of course, we hope it will instill goals and targets for area-based, building on the enormous strides taken under the Aichi Target 11 and SDG 14-15. For us to be successful to expand the scope and the ambition of the area-based, we need, however, to look beyond the traditional way of working and traditional alliances and networking. So we hope, again, the post-2020 framework will continue to engage all sectors, stakeholder groups to be able to achieve the collective interest we all know about. The process so far has integrated all perspectives of wide range, and will finally, the future goals for ocean protection, including in the framework. Sorry? We hope we'll be able to accompany with financial resources adequate for the level of ambition and build the capacity of those with inadequate capacity to be able to implement it. We need your goodwill, solidarity, ambition, creativity, and solutions in order to enact the change that we need to achieve the sustainable future for the oceans. Thank you.
Lena, I think it's back to you.
Can you hear me now?
Lena.
Thank you for bearing with us with these technical issues. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. We have quickly another panelist. I've turned Harriet Harden Davies to a panelist. Harriet, would you like to take the floor? And I'm trying to invite you to share your camera. Yeah, again, if the camera does not work, please just proceed with audio.
Thank you very much. I regret my camera is not working, but let me proceed with audio alone. I'm Dr. Harriet Harden Davies. I'm a researcher with the Nippon Foundation Ocean Nexus program, and I lead an international scientific delegation to the UN BBNJ process. Several panelists have spoken of the UN BBNJ process this morning, the role of civil society and the role of science. I'd like to offer 3 brief reflections and a question for thought as we move towards the 4th and final round of negotiations. The revised draft text of the agreement that was released by the President in November 2019 reflects the astonishing progress that has been made. For example, for states aiming to serve as stewards of the ocean, in proposed institutional and funding mechanisms to deliver on this goal, established marine protected areas, environmental impact assessments, and even the contentious issue of marine genetic resources has seen a shift in perception from focusing on commercialization to conservation, reinforcing the importance of capacity building and technology transfer, making access to scientific tools and technologies. These are key achievements, but there are several areas where further discussions are needed. I'd like to highlight 3. Firstly, developing concrete mechanisms for capacity building that can enable equitable participation of all states with access to technology. We have a chance here to listen to the needs of developing countries in the coming months. Secondly, is identifying practical solutions for sharing in science to overcome the remaining hurdles on the issue of marine genetic resources. Here we can learn from inclusive innovation approaches and ocean science diplomacy. And thirdly, in advancing understanding, such as the role of high seas protected areas in tackling climate change and associated threats like ocean deoxygenation that we've not been able to get much focus on in recent years at the BBNJ process. Better linking natural science and indigenous knowledge is really important for such understanding. And for institutional arrangements, we could even draw inspiration from novel approaches like rights of nature laws to consider new ways of having equitable outcomes from participation decision-making. Meetings like this and intersessional dialogues are crucial to maintain momentum and build ambition at this crucial stage in the negotiations. How can we make best use of this time? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harriet. And François Houllier, je vais essayer de vous faire panéliste. Sorry, I was switching to French. I don't know why. And
No problem.
And then we will go back to the panel, I think, because we're running a little bit late. Monsieur Houllier, if you can share your camera, and if it doesn't work again, we just go on with the audio. François Houllier, I think your mic seems to be open, so you should be able to speak. No.
You're not hearing him.
No, I think we will proceed to Marie Romani.
Yes.
C'est bon. Marie Romani, I will make you a panelist.
Hello, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, hello. I would like to share a message that is complementary from what has been said by the different panelists that I really thank very much. My message is delivered on behalf of Purificación Canals, that is the president of MEDPAN, the network of MPA managers in the Mediterranean. Please apologize her as she had to leave the session before the end. So to achieve the post-2020 MPA targets, beyond the creation of new MPAs and more strong protection that is absolutely needed in the future, it will be also crucial to ensure effective management of MPAs, meaning adequate human and material capacity to manage those MPAs, as well as skills, and also to ensure adequate and sustainable financing of MPAs, as His Serene Highness Prince Albert said in the opening of the session. And to do so, I would like to underline that effective operational tools are needed, such as networks of MPA managers, for example, MedPan in the Mediterranean, but there are other networks beyond the Mediterranean in other regional seas, and also trust funds or environmental funds for MPAs, such as the Med Fund in the Mediterranean. Existing national, sub-regional, and also regional human networks of MPAs in the Mediterranean and in other regional seas are successful in gathering MPA managers facing the same challenges. Those networks make possible to generate creativity, problem solving, build capacities, and to share also resources among MPAs. Networks make also possible to create the needed linkages for post-2020 between MPA actions on the ground at local level and decision-making process related to MPA at national, regional, and international levels. Acting collectively and joining forces is needed more than ever to face our ocean challenges. In the years to come, building marine communities that connect planners, managers, decision makers, scientists, civil society, donors, and other stakeholders, for example, fishers, will be key to work towards healthy, sustainable ocean and coast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jose, I think we will give the microphone back to you. Sorry, there is very little time for more questions, but if you could kindly wrap up your thoughts about the panel today, and yeah.
With pleasure. I would like to thank our panelists and those of you who have intervened here for broadening understanding on the many issues related to MPAs and other ways in which we conserve the ocean, and for continuing to be in the thick of the fight in these challenging times. I truly believe that coming out of this crisis, there is an increased awareness on the importance of the most fundamental ecosystem in our lives, which is the ocean. I also believe that there's a surge in positive sentiment to better understand what happens beneath the surface, and that there is a wave of interest by peoples around the world on how they can help to restore the health of the ocean. It is our responsibility to go out there and be part of that increasing cadre of people from all walks and lives. Many organizations from civil society are now coming together under a compound called Rise Up, which is an important element in speaking with one voice and moving forward all in step to defend the cause of the ocean. And I want to thank you all for your work. Last but not least, thank you to the Monaco Blue Initiative, this first virtual forum. Let's hope that we can meet soon, but in the meantime, let's continue to work for the ocean.
Thank you so much, Jose. This was a brilliant moderation of the panel. The panelists, can you not hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. And of course, to all our panelists today, again, thank you so much. So before wrapping up today's session, we should have just a couple of finishing closing slides up there. We wanted to make sure that you know of the next session. So the next session will be held on 9th of June at the same time. And if we can get this slide up. Great. You will note that we have another group of outstanding speakers and moderator lined up for this workshop. So we do hope that you will join us again on 9th of June. And yeah, friends, colleagues, this first digital workshop of the Monaco Blue Initiative has come to an end. On behalf of His Serene Highness and the organizers, the Prince Albert II Foundation and the Oceanographic Institute, we would like to extend a sincere thank you to all speakers and attendees for your participation today. We count on you all to help spread the messages from this MBI using the hashtag MBI 2020. And we hope to see you all again on 9th June. Thank you very, very much for your continued efforts to protect the ocean and your support to the Monaco Blue Initiative. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all.